All or nothing. Real beauty exposed. Welcome to the All or Nothing podcast, where I expose some truths behind beauty, behind cosmetic medicine, and delve into the core issues that underpin cosmetic medicine, such as why do we feel beautiful or why do we want to feel beautiful? Where does that come from? I'm Dr. Heather Anderson, cosmetic doctor and emergency doctor. I have a core passion in cosmetic medicine where I work in my clinic, ALLOR Cosmetic Medicine, ALLOR stemming from the phrase all or nothing, because that's the sort of person I am. Do it properly or don't bother at all. In my practice, I tend to treat external cosmetic concerns. However, the industry is naturally very superficial. So that means that it tends to just focus on all the external stuff, but misses the underlying stuff, which really makes us feel good on the inside. So rather than using cosmetic medicine as a means of expressing our internal beauty, people often use it as a shield for themselves and try and, hide how they really feel about themselves. So how do we feel beautiful? What really underpins beauty? How do we build this? A real core issue people have is self-worth, and that's a topic we're going to explore today. In future episodes, though, we will explore more facets of cosmetic medicine. What are treatments that are out there? What are my favorite treatments? What are things out there that may benefit you? So that could be Botox, that could be fillers, that could be microneedling, that could be, chemical peels. There's so many things out there. There's so much noise on the market. And I really feel like it's important to sort of decode these for people because it's hard. And when you go to an injector, it depends on who you see. It depends on how comfortable you feel. It depends on what they have to offer. So really empowering you to make some good choices, but also understanding the grounds behind it. So, if we talk about Botox, what else is there? What else should you know? What else can you know? And that also populates to other things. So when we talk about cosmetic medicine, we're trying to make people feel above their baseline. But, there are people that use it for reconstructive purposes as well. And that's also a cool thing to do. So there's lots of bespoke cool things that can be done. Just think of it, I guess, a bit like plastic surgery without the surgery. So we're trying to recreate harmony in people's faces. But basically, you just want someone to be able to look in the mirror and see a reflection of what makes them feel like their authentic selves and makes them feel beautiful. So that when you look at yourself, you look beautiful, but it's really about feeling beautiful. So what is self-worth? Self-worth is a core belief. Now, a core belief is like having a religion. So when you're a religious person, you believe in a higher power, whether that's God or some other figure. It means that it's a belief that is unwavering. That means that no one can really change that belief. You feel it on the inside. You have faith in what that represents. Self-worth is like that. It's another core belief that we all should have on some level. When you have good self-worth, you become someone who really loves themselves. And that's really important. It's hard, though, to build that. Just like it's hard to suddenly believe in a higher power if you haven't been a religious person before. So it takes time to really build it and understand it and believe it. Because you don't just pull faith out of your butt, do you? You actually have to start to work on it and start to change the way that you believe. So it's a tricky situation because people often mistake it for something called self-esteem. So self-esteem is a fluctuant thing that we have, various days. So you might have a good day or a bad day, good hair day, bad hair day. That means that that's something that can be changed by different external factors. However, if you have a core belief, such as a religion or self-worth, that is unshakable regardless of how bad your day's been or how bad your hair looks. The way to build that, though, is to first understand where it comes from. So we all have traumas. You could have the most perfect upbringing as a child and you could still have trauma. So that could be you were sent to your room when you had an emotion. That could be you were dismissed by your parents. That could be bullying at school. We've all had some level of trauma and we all process it differently. So when we're children, we are having development of our brains, which is accelerating over time. And as our brains develop and as we receive little micro traumas in our brain, it copes in different ways. So it reprograms the way our brain functions. When we receive lots of abuse, whether it be from our parents, from our peers, from ourselves, we start to develop something called an inner critic. Now, an inner critic is something that is basically like a little voice in the back of our mind telling us that we're not good enough. A lot of us have it and we don't realize we have it. So when you're running around the house trying to do 100 jobs, cook, clean, whatever, if you have kids, you're managing a lot of things, and you're setting expectations in your mind without even realizing it. I've got to do X, Y, and Z today, and if I don't do it, I'm going to be, a failure. we program our mind doing that in a subconscious way. And when we don't achieve certain things in our mind, we start to feel like a failure. When we feel like a failure, we beat ourselves up, and that actually erodes our self-worth. So our inner critic is really an expression of us having low self-worth, which means we're constantly berating ourselves, bullying ourselves. We're kind of reflecting the bullying that we had, whether it be as a child or from various people in our lives. We are basically doing that to ourselves. So the first key in changing this is to understand that that is actually happening. So listening to yourself when you're having those thoughts, when you're realizing that actually, why am I beating myself up about this? You know, it's not the end of the world that I didn't do the dishes today. It's not the end of the world that I didn't achieve something that I wanted today. Because, you know, let's be real, there's always tomorrow. It's just an important thing that we have to understand, because until we really realize it's happening, we can't change it, because we can only change things that we acknowledge. So the first step is to understanding, one, that you have an inner critic. The next thing is, how the hell do we get rid of that guy? A really good way of getting rid of it is literally just to say delete. So that seems really simple, but it actually is really powerful. So next time you have a thought in your mind that's telling you, you didn't do enough, you look like crap, what are you doing, you idiot, whatever, you're beating yourself up on some level, you just say delete. You say it in your mind, and if you have to, you say it out loud. And you keep saying it until that guy shuts up. And it can take time, okay? When you do that, though, you start to be kinder to yourself. And lots of people are inherently very kind, but when you're not kind to yourself, it's really hard to be kind to other people. It's because you're always feeling like you're on the back foot. You always feel like you're failing. So if you feel like you're failing, it's hard to be happy for other people. It's hard to be, you know, feeling good that other people are succeeding and doing things, because you're feeling like, oh, I'm always failing. This guy in my head's telling me that. And so you're really wanting other people to, I guess, validate you in some way. So when you have an inner critic, you also seek external validation from other people. Now, that's really interesting in the context of cosmetic treatments, because that's kind of where we're all going with the cosmetic stuff, isn't it? We're trying to look good to other people. But I really feel like we need to use it as an expression of our true, authentic selves. But that really starts from loving yourself and being kind to yourself. So that means that you're getting cosmetic treatments as a means of expressing yourself for your own self-worth, not for anyone else's opinion. Okay, so that means we're not trying to fit into trends. We're not trying to be like other people. I'm not trying to look like Kim Kardashian. I'm not trying to look like Angelina Jolie. I'm not trying to look like someone who's not me, but I'm trying to look like the best version of myself, because I want to express that, because that's what makes me happy, because I like loving myself, and we should all feel that way. But that is a journey. So first of all, we delete our inner critic. That's really important. And that's a really powerful place to be, when you can at least just say delete when that guy pops his little voice up and tells you you're not doing well enough. The next thing is to now start to release the need for external validation. So that means that you're going through your life only needing your own validation. So when you have good self-worth, meaning you are worthy of all the good things that you feel like you want in this life, when you have good self-worth, you know that you're the only one who has the power to basically justify your worth. No one else can tell you that your worth is less than anyone else's. So you have the power. When you realize that only you define your self-worth, you start to realize that it doesn't really matter what people say about you. You'll always be a villain in someone's story. Someone's always going to say something bad about you for their own issues, and that's okay, because you know your truth. They don't change your worth. Only you do. So that's also a very powerful place to be, because that means now that you can go through life gradually becoming more and more your authentic self, wearing that outfit, having your hair that way, dyeing your hair that way, having that cosmetic treatment, expressing yourself, wearing those clothes that you've always wanted to, that you feel like might be a bit too loud, bit too whatever. You're doing it because that's what makes you feel happy. You're becoming your authentic self. And I say all these things because I've been on my own journey. So I'm certainly not perfect. I've had my fair share of traumas in my childhood. We all have. And we can choose when we go through those to either become a victim and feel like, you know, the world is against us constantly. And with confirmation bias, as humans, we all go around basically reinforcing the thoughts we have in our mind to prove that it's real. So if you're on this negative spiral, you start to look for negative things attract to you. It's very much an energy thing. And then you start to become more negative and you spiral down. It's really hard to break that cycle. That also stems from low self-worth. That also stems from feeling really horrible about yourself, beating yourself up, your inner critic getting angry at you constantly. You just end up spiraling. It's really hard to break that cycle. And those cycles are really translatable through generations of family. So you've got this intergenerational trauma that just keeps happening. And it's really hard to see because often people in families don't see that this is a pattern. They're modeled behavior that is probably not the best thing. And then they start to express it. And then they hand it on to their kids without even realizing it. And the sad thing is none of these people intend to do it. It's habitual. It's subconscious. It's something that is really hard to break because no one's really realized that it's a problem. And that's why cycle breakers, people who don't want to follow those patterns, end up becoming villains in those stories for those people. Because people don't like seeing people change and break a cycle because it makes them feel like crap. Why have I been wasting my time with this cycle? They either have to break the cycle themselves, and that might be too hard or too painful to do. So they would rather villainize that person who is changing the whole, trajectory of the game, basically, by making them out to be the scapegoat for all the problems. And that is what happens. It happens in lots of cultures, lots of cycles, families, friends, whatever. It's a common occurrence. But if you are that cycle breaker, if you are that villain, even though you know damn well in your heart that you're not that person, you actually know your truth. If you have good self-worth, it actually doesn't matter. It might be sad in the sense that you've lost connections with people that you love. It might be sad that things were never quite what they seemed or never will be what you hoped that they would be. But ultimately, it's a really peaceful place to be because people have issues, and just because they have issues and they project onto other people, it doesn't mean that it has to affect you. The way, though, that you get around that is that you build boundaries with those people. So when you become a villain, when you become someone who's seen in a light that you don't feel like is authentic to yourself, you just have to build a boundary. And that's not an angry boundary. It's not like, hey, I don't want to be friends with you anymore. I'm breaking up with you as a family member. It's none of that. It's just slow fade. Slow fade is a powerful thing where you can still have kindness for them. You can still love them. You can still want the best for them. And you can still be on good terms with them on some level, but you don't have to try and change them because as humans, we can only change when we want to. We can't force it. So I used to do it myself. You go around people and you're like, oh, I can see that there's a problem. Let me go in and fix it. But when you do that, people often don't want to hear it. And they get pretty pissed off, fair enough too, because they don't think that there's a problem. It happens with addiction. It happens with bad patterns. It happens with all sorts of things. People can't change until they realize it's a problem and therefore want to change. So it's that old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So that is a really powerful thing to remember. This is a hard kind of process, but all it comes down to is starting with you, starting with building that self-worth, deleting that inner critic, really, really important, and then slowly but surely making sure that you're no longer seeking validation from other people. So realizing that people will always have an opinion of you, but you know in your mind your truth, and even if they say something bad, honestly, if you put out that good energy and you just be a good human and you be true to yourself, eventually things will work out. And that does take an element of faith. And I guess this is where this whole core belief / religion side of it comes in. Like you're basically becoming your own religion. You are creating your own Bible, you're creating your own religion. And that's kind of what we should all do. Whether or not you're religious in any other context, I believe we all need to have faith in ourselves. But that is a really hard journey. But we can all start today. And I certainly started this process a few years ago when I I realized that there were certain qualities that I was expressing that I didn't like about myself, that I knew were habitual, I knew were, learned behaviors from various traumas I'd been through, relationships, bullying, whatever. And then you start to go, well, I don't have to be like that anymore. And it's fascinating, but writing down that list of where it comes from is actually a really good start as well. So writing down the origins. When were you bullied? Who was the name of that bully? What did they do to you? Do you have any memories of, getting locked in your room, or, was there a really cutting comment that your mum or dad said to you? What happened? Or did they just not seem to care? Was there certain times in your life where you felt that you were treated unfairly and you don't even know why? And the interesting thing is that the bigger picture will probably show that, your parents probably had, best intentions, and they probably didn't realize they were hurting you in that way. Because, when you become a parent, you realize that, there's a lot happening and you only do your best, but you can't get it right all the time. But when you receive that as a child, your perception of it is so different, and it can be really cutting in the way that your brain is molded as you age. So that is something that you need to write down. And you have to write it, because when you write it, you start to actually pay attention to it and process it. So write down the origins of what could have triggered your low self-worth. And then you can start to heal those things. You can start to see them objectively, like, oh, okay, maybe that wasn't as bad. Okay, maybe that wasn't intentional. And even if it was intentional, it doesn't mean that it makes you less worthy as a person. The flip side, or the next list that I want you to do, or that we all should do, is we need to write a list now of all the things we love about ourselves. That's probably one of the hardest things that is to do, especially if you have low self-worth, because you're like, I don't believe any of that stuff. So you might need a bit of help. But it can be embarrassing doing it as well, because you think, I'm going to start like bragging about myself. And very much in the Kiwi culture, we have this, tall poppy syndrome, where if you stand out too much or you be a bit too much, then people start looking at you negatively, like, they're trying to like be better than everyone else. It's good to be humble, for sure. We should all be humble. But at the same time, having good self-worth and loving yourself, interestingly, does not make you egotistical at all. It's quite the flip side. So on my journey in this whole process, when I started it a few years ago, I was genuinely worried I was going to become narcissistic or something. You think, oh God, I'm going to like myself too much. That just doesn't sound good, does it? But the fascinating thing is narcissists, so people that like to put down other people to feel better, people that like to, kind of come across very egotistical and braggy and yucky, those people actually have the lowest self-worth of all. The reason for that is because they have an empty cup. So we all have cups. And if your cup is empty, low self-worth, you're always trying to fill it. And when you're always trying to fill it, you want other people to help fill it for you, because you haven't figured out how to fill it for yourself. So you walk around wanting people to fill your cup, and because it's so empty, you not only try and pull it from other people, you also try and put other people down, because you want to raise yourself up. So the people that do come across as very narcissistic are actually the people who have the lowest self-worth of all of us. So it's quite a sad state of affairs. And when you start seeing that, you start understanding human behavior better. You can pick out the narcissist from a mile away. And it's because they just haven't understood how to build it. The sad thing about narcissists, though, is that when they have really low self-worth and they feel that way, their narcissism is like a shield. So it becomes very hard to penetrate. So, you might go up to someone that you care about, you might realize they have some narcissistic traits and go, oh, well, hey, have you ever thought about this? And they'll probably push back hard. And they'll probably say, I don't have a problem. And people like that, you know what? They're not in the right place to change. And they may never change. Narcissism is one of the strongest shields that you can have as a human, and it's very hard to penetrate. And that's a combination of model behavior from people in their lives, combination of genetics, combination of their own traumas and how they coped with it and how they sort of moved on for it. So they created this very powerful shield around them that basically stops people penetrating. But the sad thing is that this shield is actually around an empty cup, which is a sad state of affairs. So if there's any people with those traits listening, it's a really good place just to start and think, hang on, what do I really love about myself? Not in a braggy way, not in I'm better than other people way, but what actually do I have? And it's not just superficial things, and superficial things are great. Write those down too. I like my hair, I like my eyes, whatever. But if you love certain characteristics about yourself, I'm kind, I'm compassionate, I'm interesting, I'm funny, these things that you might not even really want to admit. Perhaps you've always believed it, but you've never felt good enough to say it. Like I remember back in the old days of high school, we had a health class and we used to have to say our favorite feature about ourselves. And I remember it was so hard to do, so hard. I felt embarrassed to do it. I felt like I didn't have the right to do it. I felt like it was really braggy and why would they make us do this? But they were trying to, I guess, program self-worth in some way, shape or form when we were teenagers, which is insanely hard because that's a hard time of life. But there is good intention behind that, but there's more to it than that. It's not just what is your one favorite feature. It's what are all your good features? What actually do you bring to the table? What are your interesting quirks? What hobbies are you into? These things all piece together what makes you an awesome human, what makes you interesting. And then you start to realize and you start to bring to the surface the things that make you authentically you. You're like, well, that's kind of cool that I'm interested in that weird thing. You know, that might go against the grain, but actually it's quite cool to be different and interesting. And even if you don't have anything specific or mainstream or whatever you have is actually, it's valid and it's important. And it's something that needs to be recognized. But that is a hard task because 1, you probably will find it really awkward to do. 2, you'll feel like you're kind of breaking this rule that you're not supposed to, especially in New Zealand culture. 3, it's like something that you're terrified that someone else is going to read because, like, you know, who wants to look at a list of all the things they love about themselves? So a really good way of doing it is, say, on your phone or something like that in like a secure folder on your notes file, writing them down and just adding to them when something pops up. And then you start to see the good things about yourself. Slowly programs into your mind. By doing that as well and reading it multiple times a day, so at least twice, if not 3 times, if not whenever you open your phone, read it and say it in the mirror if you have to, until you believe it. So it's shifting your mind from being like, okay, in theory, whatever, I have good qualities. But now you're trying to transition into, I have these qualities and I love them about myself. It's what makes me me. It's what makes me unique. It's what I love. And that's not to say that you can't still see things that you want to improve. But by recognizing the things you do bring to the table, you start to realize that even if there are some negative traits that you want to work on, such as, you know, various things like cosmetic treatments you want to highlight or enhance or kind of minimize the signs of aging, and that's totally cool. But at the same time, it's going to marry together that all as one, where you're going to get the most out of your treatments. I find it hard to believe that anyone who has really low self-worth and has a cosmetic procedure done will ever really get happiness from it. Now, again, that's not to say that cosmetic treatments can't enhance how we feel about ourselves, because they do kind of marry together. There is like a bit of a yin-yang give and take situation here, but we just have to be careful that we're not using it as a shield. And I believe that the people who are having the treatments done who are going in a direction where they're starting to look a bit overdone and weird, which is, you know, in part due to a warped perception of themselves, but also in part due to a probably not the best injector who's not looking out for them and kind of taking photos and seeing things from an objective point of view, and being aware acutely of the aesthetic endpoint, where it's, you know, a place where someone reaches the pinnacle of what makes them naturally beautiful and then they become weird looking. That's because someone is trying to fix a problem that they haven't fixed within themselves. So there's a thing called body dysmorphic disorder, which is a genuine disorder where people have a warped perception of themselves. It's when they see something that we don't see. So they're like, oh my God, this one line, it's like really bothering me. And you're like, I can't see it. And they just focus on it. As injectors and cosmetic practitioners, we are trained, or should be trained, to recognize that. So there are tools that we can use to be able to screen for that. And those people who are genuinely suffering from that do need to be referred to a psychologist before they have cosmetic treatments, because they start to just go down a path where they're never going to be happy. So it's not good for them, but it's also not good for the injector, because they'll have a lot of complaints and it will be a very hard process to start. But it's important that those people understand where it comes from. BDD is more along the pathological spectrum, so definitely needs a lot more psychological input. But a lot of us might have a small element of it to some extent if we're starting to seek out treatments as a means of making ourselves feel better. So it's about always being cautious and being like, okay, I want to get this done. I've always disliked this part of my body or this part of my face. How can I make it better? But then kind of making sure that you realize that when that treatment's done, that you actually see the result that it's going to create. So you have to marry them together. So we kind of do all these things. So now we're writing this list, which is basically this list of things we love about ourselves. We've written the list of origins of where it all comes from. Where do we go from here? Now this kind of comes along the fact of making some affirmations about yourself. So you want to first of all have kindness and compassion for yourself. So when something bad happens, so say you make a mistake, you first of all have to tell yourself that you are not your mistake. You are a human who makes mistakes. We all are. So I don't know, you forgot to do something, you dropped something, whatever. Rather than beat yourself up, let that inner critic go crazy and go, you're an idiot, how dare you, what is wrong with you, rah, rah, rah. You start to spiral and you punish yourself and you feel really, really negative. What you need to do instead is go, oh, well, like I'm a human that makes mistakes. I will do my best to not do it again, but I'm going to be kind to myself. And when you start to be kind to yourself, you start to soften. Like you feel like you're giving yourself a hug, which is weird to say, but it is so powerful. It's kind of like the hug that you might have been craving from your partner, from your parent, from your friend, whatever. You're craving that external validation, but actually that hug is something powerful you can give yourself. But that is with being kind to yourself. So something bad happens, you go, okay, I'm a human that makes mistakes. I'm going to be kind to myself. I'll try not to do it again. The beautiful thing about that is that it actually becomes really easy to take accountability for your problems. So when you make a mistake, someone hits you up on something, you can see it more clearly and go, oh God, didn't mean to do that. But then you can apologize authentically because you're genuinely sorry that that happened. It was not your intention. But then also it's okay to apologize because it's not going to affect your worth. By admitting fault and therefore, telling this person that you didn't mean to do something, you're actually instead going to be really owning it in a way that's not affecting your worth. And if someone who you apologize to made you feel crap for doing that, then that's on them. It's not on you. So you just let them be and you build a boundary with that person. So when we go through life, we see people show us their true character. So people will show us if they are a nice, forgiving person. And if they're not, you don't have to say that to them. You don't need to get into a fight. You don't need to do any of that stuff. You just need to slowly fade away and build a boundary. And just see. You go, I see you. Say it in your mind. I see you, and I'm just not going to be part of that. When you start doing that, you start attracting positive energies. And it's so interesting because we are the average of the 5 people closest to us. So if you surround yourself with negative, toxic people, you will become negative, toxic. So if your friends are all gossipers, they all bitch about people, okay, well then you're probably going to be the same, aren't you? Because you're not going to have anything else to talk about. So think to yourself, is this really something that I want to be around? Do I get energy doing this? Or am I going to be energized talking about positive things, about growth, about how we can, make ourselves better and be the best versions of ourselves? Or do I really like just gossiping? Because if you just like gossiping, then that's a good time to reflect on yourself as to why you feel you have to take other people down to feel better about yourself. That generally comes from low self-worth. So this is all kind of coming back to the same concept where we don't realize the core issue. We haven't developed a faith in ourselves. We haven't developed that religious side of ourselves where you are your own higher power. And you can still have a higher power. You can still believe in any other religious context you want, but this marries with that. And I think we miss the boat a lot when we just look at that. And there are sometimes people will say that, sometimes people will use, conventional religion as a means of masking their own lack of self-worth. They're sort of focusing that energy and that faith in a being when in actual fact, they need to turn it on themselves. But I would argue that both can coexist. And you can love, your God or whoever that might be, as well as yourself equally. And they'll marry together well. And then everything just kind of falls into place. Positive things happen because now you're looking at positive things. You're eliminating negativity. So you're building boundaries with negative people. You're starting to love yourself. You're starting to believe those things that you've written on your list. You're starting to acknowledge and make peace with the bad things that have happened to you on the list. You're starting to change the way you're thinking. And when you're having things happen in your day-to-day, you're being kind to yourself. You make a mistake, it's okay. I'm a human that makes mistakes. I'm not my mistake. It's okay. And then you just soften. And all that background anxiety, frustrations, all that stuff that, you're probably carrying on your day-to-day, it just starts to soften. And things just feel a lot better. So that's such a powerful place to be. And I just think it's so important that we understand that as a baseline for whatever we carry through. And in the cosmetic industry, we don't talk about this enough because it's naturally a superficial thing. And there might be a lot of people in the industry or the people who obviously are using the industry as a means of making themselves feel better about themselves when in actual fact they're carrying low self-worth. They're trying to fill their cup with this external stuff when they all just need to work on it from the inside. So that's such a core thing. So don't forget to acknowledge your feelings and frustrations. Don't forget to say those things. So if you're feeling frustrated, say, I'm feeling frustrated. It's okay to feel frustrated. It's okay. You're validating it yourself. You're reinforcing it for yourself. You're kind of, well, a lot of the time when we get angry in life, we start to, well, we do seek external validation. You want someone to validate your feelings. You know, that's standard teaching with any medical practice is you have a patient who's angry, you should always reflect their feelings back to them. And that sounds very, you know, kind of, I guess, by the book if you're doing it like in a teaching concept. But we as humans want our feelings validated. But you have the power to validate them for yourself. So doing that instantly diffuses those feelings. It doesn't take them away, but it just means you're not caught up in it, because those feelings or the negative feelings will grow until you validate them and acknowledge them, and then they kind of simmer down, and that's what we're aiming for. So when you're feeling strong emotions, it's really powerful to notice them and say what they are. How do they feel? How do they make you feel? When you start to do that as well, when you're feeling that frustration, when you're feeling that, you know, everything is against you, you start to take a step back and look at your feelings more objectively. That's also really powerful, because you can still feel them and you can still have reactions and you can still have responses. But when you validate them by saying, it's okay to feel this way, when you actually start to label them, okay, I feel angry, you start to detach from them. And when you do that, you don't react to them. You don't feel them quite so deeply. You still feel them on some level, but you also cope with them better. So it's not like we're ignoring them and we're like sweeping them under the rug. We're riding the wave, and it is always a wave. Feelings are always transient. They don't last forever. But you just have faith in that you have good self-worth, that you have all those right tools to get through that wave. So that wave might seem really big, like, oh my God, it's a tsunami, but you could, you know, okay, I've got my wetsuit on, I've got my life jacket on, I've got my boogie board, I've got whatever I need to ride that wave. Having that faith in yourself that you can ride that wave, knowing that it's temporary, and then saying what the wave is. I feel angry, I feel hurt, I feel sad, and it's okay to feel that way. You'll notice that things will slide off you a lot easier. And then you won't start to beat yourself up all the time. So these are all things that all, like life in general, feelings, they all go and act to erode our self-worth. And it's like society is conditioned to that, but so is stress in life. You know, we all experience stress. We all have a lot on our plate, you know, jobs, kids, friends, family, whatever. There's always stuff getting thrown at us left, right, and center. Society now is even probably more stressful because we have information overload. There's always social media. There's always stuff just bombarding us. And that's a lot to take on. But just understanding these basic concepts will help you get through those stressful times, so you're not kind of feeling so eaten alive by them all the time. Another really important thing about emotions is noticing it without judging yourself for having the emotion. So along the lines of saying that it's okay to feel an emotion, don't judge yourself. You might be feeling a certain way that to any other person might go, you don't have the rights to feel that. But guess what? You do. We are all entitled to our feelings. Our feelings are always valid. Always. Even if that's what you say in response, my feelings are valid. You'll notice a change and a shift when you do. But you have to not judge yourself for feeling that way. If you start to acknowledge the feeling and you start to accept that you're feeling that way without judgment, you start to feel that it's okay to feel. And then again, as I sort of said before, things just simmer down and they just get a little bit easier. When you start to notice feelings without judgment, you start to choose consciously if you want to respond to those feelings. That's also really helpful because it gets you out of situations where perhaps you would have overreacted or gotten into a situation where you shouldn't have said something that, you know, you might regret. So consciously choosing to respond. So we're kind of basically putting a pause on all the frustrations right now. We're kind of being like, negative stuff's still going to happen. It's not all roses, it's not all unicorns, none of that. That is not life. But your perception changes things, and this is changing your perception. It's not being scared of negative feelings. It's not being scared of negative situations. It's kind of enabling yourself and empowering yourself to feel like, okay, 1, I'm worthy. 2, that I'm strong. And 3, I can handle my emotions and I can sit there and I can validate them and I can consciously choose to respond to them without judgment. That's a really awesome place to be as well. Another thing you can do is tell yourself it's okay. And that sounds so basic, but it is so powerful because again, you're giving yourself that reassurance. So all of these things you're doing is building your self-worth to the point where someone with really good self-worth is okay to lose everything. That's terrifying, but it's okay to lose everything. And you know, literally think about it. You've got such good self-worth, you lose your family, your friends, your job, everything in your life, but you know that you're going to be okay. And that doesn't remove devastation and sadness because those are inevitable feelings if you lost things important to you. But you're going through life knowing you've got your back. You love yourself and you're going to be okay. So that is a place where we're aiming for with good self-worth. And that is a place where you can just do things to improve yourself, such as cosmetic treatments, to build yourself up in a way that just keeps enabling you to feel more like your authentic self and be happier and more fulfilled and see all the light and the beautiful things that happen in your life without having this frustration, constant internal turmoil where you're always fighting against yourself, trying to be better, but you're telling yourself you're not good enough. And that's all started probably from when you're younger, like most of us. And that's just a cultural thing. It's just our parents did our best sort of thing, but sometimes things do affect us and hurt us in a certain way. Another really good tip is to practice gratitude. Now, gratitude is actually the key to happiness. You can't be happy if you don't have gratitude. So you need to be grateful. One really cool thing is to say what you're most grateful for every day. In fact, I do that with my kids. And I think that's really important. Even though my oldest does not want to say it, it's just really helpful because it just programs your mind to look for the things that make you feel grateful. And again, you know, well, I don't have time for that. But yes, you do, because you do have time to be able to program your brain. And these are things that are not quick fixes. We're in a quick fix society where we just want everything to be done now. But you just have to work on it one little piece at a time. It's kind of like exercise. You know, you can't just work out once and then, you know, suddenly you're fit. You've got to do the time. So these are small things that you can change, but it's doable. You can say something you're grateful for when you hop into bed at night. You can say something you're grateful for when you're brushing your teeth in your mind. You know, there are things you can do. You just insert it where you've already got a habit. So most of us, if not all of us, should at least brush our teeth twice a day. And when we do, that could be your time to practice gratitude. When you do that, one little seed planted twice a day, you'll notice a huge difference to your life. Your brain will be conditioned and rewired into seeing the positive, and then you'll go on that upward spiral, which is exactly where we all need to be. Along the lines of self-worth is self-care. So self-care is something that a lot of us don't feel like we're entitled to. Self-care is something that is probably more crucial than anything else. It's kind of like that analogy of when you're on an aeroplane and you should always put the oxygen mask on before the person next to you. It's that concept. So if you aren't taking care of yourself, it's very hard to take care of other people. So it goes back to the filling of the cup. Self-care and self-worth enables you to fill your cup. We all need a full cup. When your cup is full, it starts spilling over to other people with true kindness and authenticity, with true love and true generosity and gratitude. All the positive things just spill out of the cup. But you have to fill it. And you have to do that as well by caring for yourself. So, of course, a lot of us have a lot of responsibilities, but a lot of us don't feel entitled to take care of ourselves, you know. It's embarrassing, or it's, you know, oh no, I shouldn't go do that. I don't have time to exercise, you know, I don't have time to eat healthy, you know, I don't have time to, you know, pamper myself. And the fact that we even call it pamper, you know, it's sort of like you're not entitled to it. But self-care is kind of the root of so many things we need to do. It's kind of like if we think of ourselves like a tree. So we all have roots, we all have trunks, and we all have branches. And it's whether or not we really work on our roots and work on our trunks and our core, so our cup, so that we can grow our branches and our beautiful leaves. Now, there are a lot of people out there who are walking around and they are a tree that is very hollow. They might put a lot of things on the tree, I don't know, dress it up with diamonds and all sorts of things, which is basically making them be nicer looking, nicer on the outside, but there's just not much going on the inside. So this is all what's building you up to really putting down good roots, to really making the wood inside of you nice and healthy so that you can grow the leaves and then express yourself in the most authentic, beautiful way possible. So that comes from self-care, self-worth and self-care. So self-care, it's hard to know, what is that? There's a lot of stuff like cosmetic treatments, self-care, exercise, self-care, healthy diet, self-care, loving yourself, self-care, growing your self-worth, self-care, boundaries with toxic people and people who are not good for you, self-care. These are all things that you decide what constitutes self-care. It's just about putting yourself first, and that does not make you selfish. That makes you more inclined to be selfless. That enables you to express yourself in a certain way where basically people, they feel the genuineness because you have capacity for it. But that's not to say that people who are very kind and have a full cup could just go on spilling to everyone. They also have the strongest boundaries. So the kindest people have the strongest boundaries. So you've got to protect your cup as well. But you also have to do self-care. Now, self-care is, because it's such a personal thing, a really good place to start is to kind of create a vision board. That's what I did for myself years ago. So creating a board of what constitutes self-care, whether that's meditation, whether that's yoga, whatever sort of peaceful things you think would make you feel good. And then you piece it together one by one. You can create a little collage on your phone. That's what I did. And then you can keep it and you can look at it. It's inspirational. And if you look at it, regularly over a period of time, just like when you read the list that you've written about yourself and you say the gratitude, you start to piece together and make little seeds towards feeling a more positive future. And you just start to think about it. So what are some examples of self-care? So emotional self-care is a really good thing to sort of start with. So emotional self-care is when you say no to things. So when you build boundaries. So it's when you also reward yourself for doing things that, may have been tough to do. It's when you allow yourself to express your feelings in a safe environment. It's also making a gratitude diary. It's about allowing your feelings to be around without having judgment for those feelings. Emotional self-care. So you're being kind to yourself. Another type of self-care is physical self-care. So you want to do things like whether that's yoga, meditation, whether that's, eating healthy, exercising, whether that's having cosmetic treatments, whether that's doing things that externally make you feel like you, but also internally make you feel like you. That's physical self-care. Social self-care is another one. So that's avoiding toxic people. That's also asking for help. Now that's an important thing. You can't do everything, and it's okay to ask for help. But knowing that you're asking for help is that it's not going to affect your self-worth. It doesn't make you any less than that you need help and that you're willing to ask for it. Spiritual self-care is another one. So that's meditation. That might be doing other kind of things that, help, whether that's going to a church or being part of a bigger unit. Spiritual self-care is really important as well. So you're taking care of every facet of your life that makes you you and embracing what feels right and what makes you you, and that's what kind of fulfills your cup and makes you the best authentic version of yourself. Along the lines of self-care is self-compassion. So that is having compassion for yourself when things go wrong. Okay, so you're being kind to yourself. There's a concept called yin and yang self-compassion. Now, the yin is the feminine side. So that is, say you're having a bad day, I don't know, the world feels like it's against you. You're doing physical things to kind of make yourself feel better. So you might run yourself a bath, you might have the chamomile tea, you might, do things that sort of pamper you a little bit or just make you feel like you're being cared for. Yang self-compassion is when you're the masculine side, when you're building boundaries. So you're kind of realizing what's not serving you and you're pushing it away. So yin and yang self-compassion is a balanced view of compassion. So you can't have yin without the yang. That's because if you have the yin, so that's the taking care of yourself, more of the feminine energy, then you don't have good boundaries. You're going to end up being hurt a lot. So you might feel good or feel a bit better in the initial stages, but you're going to keep being hurt by people or situations that keep not serving you. On the flip side, yang self-compassion, if you just have that and not the yin, you'll end up having problems because you'll build strong boundaries, but you don't take care of yourself in the same instance. So you still feel quite negative and, pissed off about the whole thing. That is not a good place to be either. So it's about balancing them together, understanding that both are equally important and both serve you in a way of building self-compassion and caring for yourself. Another good tool that you could try is making an expectation inventory. So that means that expectations that you might walk around with carrying, like this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, you have to start to write those down, identify them as potentially unrealistic, especially if you're expecting other people to behave in a certain way, and you need to let them go. Okay, so you can still have some sort of expectations, but it goes along the lines of seeking external validation, where if you are expecting someone or something to turn out in a certain way to make your inner critic feel happy, to make you feel better about yourself, you're going to go through life being disappointed. I myself was an example of that. I was always that kid that, set very high expectations and got very frustrated when I didn't have them met. And it's a hard thing to break because, it's like we sort of set expectations as a means of setting goals. So, like if you have a particular job you want to do that requires a particular amount of study, for example, having those goals are great. And we should all have goals. We want to work towards the future. It's a really good direction to just, catapult us forward. But with that can sometimes make expectations be too high, but also they can populate to other areas of your life where you don't really need them. You might set unrealistic expectations of people next to you, and that's how people often self-sabotage relationships and things, because they start to put unrealistic expectations. They're sort of setting things up for failure. And sometimes people will even move the goalposts. So they'll have an expectation, someone comes to meet it, and then they end up moving it so that it's impossible for that person to succeed. It's sort of a way that sort of toxic relationships kind of perpetuate, and it's something that you need to release. But the only way you can release those expectations is to write down a list of, what are they? And really break them down. What is this expectation that I've got, and why do I have it? Where does it come from? And actually, let's walk through what happens if it doesn't work out. Because those are things that really empower us to see that it's actually not the end of the world if things don't work out exactly as we planned. We can embrace it. And that's kind of leaning into the faith of having self-worth and being your own religion. Because when you have faith, you lean into the happenings of the universe more. So it's about having that positive energy and seeing that, things can happen for various reasons. And no experience is ever wasted. None. So everything that you've had in your past that may have been considered bad, negative, whatever, look at it. Really look at what it's taught you. Was there a lesson that you learnt? Did it tell you about someone that you no longer should have much to do with? Is it something that, that revealed something in yourself that helped you grow? Because we all need to keep growing, and to grow means to get out of your comfort zone. So discomfort really makes us grow. So when you're jumping out of your comfort zone, inevitably you're going to grow. This is why, we develop resilience when we go through little traumas. So all those traumas that you did write down for the origins of where your low self-worth came from, they're actually really been helpful to grow resilience as well. But growing resilience can sometimes also lead to, growing other negative traits, which is low self-worth. So it's about marrying it together as well. But no experience is ever wasted. But it's all about perception, because if you learn to perceive things in a positive way, then you learn that even when bad things happen, there is always a silver lining. There's some reason for it that will eventually manifest later, or you'll see it later. But it's hard in the process, but it's about trusting the process, and that is hard. So when we write down our expectation inventory and we release those expectations, it's like we're releasing control, which is not easy to do. That's particularly hard if you have any anxiety, because we don't like not having control. But it's a place that really helps you just kind of go through life and kind of just being ready for anything, and seeing that whatever does happen will teach you something. You'll make sense of it, but you've got to believe that will happen, and then it will all manifest in that way. So another really cool tool that you could add to your list of jobs and homeworks that I've given you. But this will help you in the future for sure. And we don't jinx things, we manifest them. So that means that when you're thinking about this stuff, you're slowly kind of working it into your reality. You're manifesting them. And that is a powerful thing. And that is something that people take for granted a lot. I was definitely taught that, if you say something like, oh, this good thing is going to happen, oh my God, you're going to jinx it. That's just such a common cultural thing that we talk about, but it is not the case at all. guess what? Bad things are going to happen. Bad things are going to happen. You're going to deal with it. You're going to ride the emotions. You're going to, get through it. But trying to sort of enable yourself to ever feel a certain way means that you're kind of living by fear. And guess what? Living in that fear ain't going to make you any more prepared for that bad thing to happen. Bad things are still going to happen. You're still going to feel devastated. You're still going to feel sad. You're still going to feel all those bad things. But you can choose to consciously respond to it. You can choose how you ride that wave. You can feel the feelings without judgment, all those things. But thinking positively, that's not going to discount, or it's not going to make it more likely that anything bad's going to happen. So just try and releasing that and focusing on those positives. But that takes time. All of this stuff takes time. So creating that vision board, making that inspirational kind of future for yourself where you can slowly but surely work towards a future that you deserve. We all deserve this, but it comes from self-worth. It comes from understanding who we are and loving who we are. But that doesn't happen overnight. Most people, I guess there are some stories of love at first sight, but most people don't look at themselves in the mirror and fall in love at first sight. So it's just about figuring out the stuff behind it, and you'll get there. It's just a process. And then when you're at that place, or when you're on that journey, looking into things like cosmetic treatments is a great idea, because that does help you feel better about yourself and can help you build your self-worth when you start realizing how beautiful you are. So rather than using it as a shield to mask stuff, you're actually using it as a means of expressing stuff. So it's just a different focus. And that is what I think we just need to remember. It's something that, it's like a duty for an injector to be able to have for their patients, where they are basically turning people away if they're going too far. They're seeing why, like, is this motivation for this person not correct? Like if they're nitpicking out things that you can't even see, like, oh my God, this is important because this is someone that needs help. This is someone that needs to build their self-worth. But I would actually argue that almost all of society has low self-worth. And that's quite a big statement, but I believe it because I believe most people's issues they have all links back to this lack of core belief in yourself. So it's just something that our society, particularly my generation and generations above me, for sure, have lacked a lot in their life. And I would, hazard to guess that even the generations below me feel the same way, or on some level. And it's just because we just don't talk about this stuff very much. And this is why it's so important that we do, because our life can change when we start to see the beauty in ourselves. But you have to believe it. You can't just say it. You have to believe it. And then you can go on this most wonderful journey in the future into being the best version of yourself, which is a beautiful place to be. So in this podcast series, we're going to talk about cosmetic medicine in all of its contexts. So that means the stuff behind the scenes. So, the deep things like the self-worth that we've already sort of touched on in this episode. But also we're going to talk about how else does cosmetic medicine benefit us? It's such a wonderful specialty in that it really helps people feel above their baseline. When I work in the emergency department in the hospital, people are very much below their baseline. And I feel privileged to be able to help people with making them feel better, obviously helping fix their problems. But cosmetic medicine is a joyous thing in that it makes you feel above your baseline. Something that we should all feel, because it's wonderful to feel more than just mediocre. It's more than just status quo. It's like your authentic self, but also like you're glowing and you're shining. There's so many cool tools in cosmetic medicine that can do that, and we can talk about the different treatments and things that can really help people express themselves in the ways that they want to, as long as we all remain true to ourselves and that we remain true to our self-worth, because it all marries together on multiple levels. And when you hit all of those levels, you feel like the best version of yourself. And then you can look good and feel good at the same time. They don't have to be mutually exclusive. They can marry together as one really amazing thing where the world just becomes the most amazing place. If there's ever a question or a topic that you want me to cover in the podcast, please do email me. Ask Dr. Heather, so ASKDRHEATR @allor.co.nz. I'd love to hear from you. I also write an article in the Causeway magazine in Whenuapai, and also the Kumeu Courier and the Westerly magazines. They also go up on my website, www.allor.co.nz. That's where you can sort of learn more about cosmetic treatments I personally offer, and I also do talk about various treatments that are out there, because it's nice to educate people into understanding it, because I really feel like people need to be empowered. There's a lot of stuff that people don't quite understand, and there's a lot of noise out there where people just, throw out treatments and do weird stuff, if I'm being honest, and it doesn't really make scientific sense. So, bring those questions in. I want to kind of decode this. I want you to feel empowered so that you feel like you can be the best version of yourself, but also that you're choosing the right path in doing that, because ultimately it's a personal journey, and that's something that you can be guided, but it's really hard to know who to trust. And hey, I'm here to say whatever you need me to say in terms of decoding stuff. So please do send emails if you have any questions. I'm also on Instagram, so at ALLOR Cosmetic Medicine. If you wanted to, get in touch, I'm happy to answer any questions as well. So stay tuned. I think it's going to be an exciting journey where we explore all the layers of cosmetic medicine and hopefully lead you to feeling like you're a better version of yourself.